Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, everyone. My name's Kurt Elster. I'm a Shopify Plus expert at ethercycle. Ethercycle being a Shopify Plus agency providing revenue optimization services for Shopify stores. And today we are presenting a fantastically valuable webinar called Why Your PPC Ads Don't Work and What to Do About It. I got the preview of it. I learned something. I was impressed by it. But our presentation today will be presented by Tom Bukovicius. And Tom may have to run at any moment. His wife is due with their first child in 5 days. So he's at his home office. Could be any moment now. So exciting stuff. And congratulations to both of you. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, Crowdcast has this wonderful Ask a Question button. So click that. What's super cool about it is it puts a list of questions there, and then at the end when we answer them, it'll highlight your question, it'll put it on the screen. Just makes it really easy for everybody. So of course, feel free to talk back in the chat, talk amongst yourselves in the chat. But if you have a question a burning question, the best way to make sure we get to it is to ask at the end. Last time I didn't get to one or two questions. There were a lot and we're limited on time, so make sure to ask it in there. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the screen over to Tom. Tom, are you ready?
I am.
All right, take it away.
All right, well, Kurt, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to present this webinar to your audience. And I think overall that this topic is very exciting because there has been an explosion of Shopify stores, and I would say like all platforms have been exploding in the past couple of years. And acquiring customers is more important than ever. So, PPC is one of the more significant channels that you can acquire customers from. So, there are a ton of mistakes that marketers make when using paid media. And happy to present this webinar to your audience, and hopefully you'll learn some really good tips on how to identify different problems in your PPC campaigns and also how to fix them. So let me share my screen with you and we can get started. All right, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I focused the screen. We got it.
Perfect. All right, so let's get started. So continuing on my previous comment about PPC campaigns, and I think that today is an exciting opportunity for everyone because the PPC traffic is growing in size and variety. And I will define the PPC traffic that I'll be talking about. Essentially, it's all paid traffic. So it's, some people call it pay-per-click, some people call it paid media, but it varies in terms of the format. And the formats can be divided into three major areas. So one is search. I call them paid search. So that's essentially traffic that you get from any search channel like Google, Yahoo, or Bing. There's also display traffic, and that's kind of divided into different areas, but I like to divide it into two different parts. One is the actual display, and then social, because actually according to eMarketer, social is part of the display under kind of like the banners and other traffic. But looking at the stats, what you can notice is that from 2014 to 2019, this traffic is expected to double. So it has increased a lot in the past couple years, and it will continue to grow and it will continue to expand. So I think it's a great news for everyone who owns a Shopify store. But at the same time, it presents a big challenge because there are more Shopify stores out there. There are more other e-commerce platforms out there, and everyone is competing for the same customer. So since the number of advertisers is going up, most of the bigger platforms, they run on an auction-based system, which actually increases the cost. So it becomes much more competitive. And on top of that, consumers get more choices, which is great, but at the same time, it increases the competition for you in the marketplace. So looking into that stats, I want to share a quick story about what happened to me about more than 10 years ago. So, I learned that lesson from eating sushi for the first time. So it was about 10 years ago or so, and my buddy and I, we went to a nightclub, and that nightclub had a restaurant. It's actually a Chicago restaurant called Raw Sushi. They were advertising, they were kind of promoting their food. And back then I was not a foodie like I am now, but I was a meat and potatoes guy. And I was not familiar with Japanese food and culture. So I saw the food, everything looked pretty good, and I assumed that everything is equivalent to the food that I was used to. And what happened was I walked up to the table, got a couple maki rolls, some yellow leaves, turns out that it was ginger, and the green stuff. And to me, it looked like maybe Japanese mashed potatoes, but other people called it wasabi. So then I was ready to try that, and got a little piece of maki and a little leaf of ginger and a spoonful of wasabi. So you can imagine the experience that happened to me when I ate a spoonful of wasabi. But and it turns out that wasabi was not equivalent to Japanese mashed potatoes. So the problem that happened was that I failed to observe, analyze, and learn from this situation. And I think that same applies to all of the marketers in terms of PPC. And what I can tell you is that PPC results is your responsibility. And let me explain what and why. There are internal and external factors influencing your PPC results. So you'll have the big dogs like Amazon.com and other big sites who will probably eat your lunch one day. You'll also have the small players who just started out, but all of them together create a marketplace and they compete against you. So you're squeezed somewhere in the middle. And what happens is that you cannot control the market. You have to deal with it. So the only thing that you can control is the internal factors. And looking into the internal factors, I think that there are three major problems that happen when you look into your PPC campaign results. So first of all, you don't know that you have a problem. So in other words, you don't know what even to look for, and there's no awareness of that. Then you're not checking if you have a problem in a particular area, even if you do know that there may be a problem. And then the third one is not knowing where to check. So what we have done at Scoop is we have developed an approach which helps us to look into four major internal factors, I will emphasize that affect your PPC campaign performance. I know that a lot of marketers like to talk only about the PPC accounts as silos. So this is my AdWords account, this is my Facebook account. But in reality, what we have learned is that there are other factors and there are bigger factors that affect your PPC performance, and I will go over them. So the first area that you have to look into is your business. And with business, what I mean is your product, your pricing, your value proposition, your customer lifetime value, all of the factors that really affect your products and why people even work with you. Then you've got the analytics, which is you look into your website behavior, your user behavior, your customer behavior, and you track and understand that aspect. Then there's the strategy part, which is the part of PPC, which is your PPC strategy and how you decide on what to focus on and which channels do you want to pursue, how you're going to pursue them. And finally, the execution of the strategy. Now, to make this presentation easier to understand and so you can follow this better, because in some areas I will go technical, I will use a hypothetical example of Sushi King. Since I was enlightened by sushi by eating one spoonful of wasabi, I'll use Sushi Supply Store on Shopify as an example, and I think it will help you to understand that. And also, we'll assume that Google AdWords is the primary channel for client acquisition for this particular store. And I know that since Kurt is mainly about making money for his audience, we're the same too. So we're going to cover the biggest metrics that impact the bottom line. So I will quickly go over the metrics that we will review, and then how each component of base will help impact that and how they will help you to improve the bottom line. So as you can see here, we'll start with an account that has 1,000 clicks with 5% conversion rates, and that means they're getting about 50 customers a month. The customer lifetime value of Sushi King is $100, and it's making about $5,000 a month in gross profit. The cost per click in this industry is about $5, and the company is spending $5,000 a month. So looking into kind of like the ROI metrics, the return on ad spend is 100%, and customer acquisition cost is $100. So what we're going to do is we're going to use base approach, where we will cover business analytics, strategy, and execution, to 3x the results for Sushi King. And we will follow kind of step by step, and you'll notice which factors are being implemented. So let's get started. So let's start with the business. So one of the big mistakes that I've noticed is the customer lifetime value. And in most cases, the big mistake is that your customer lifetime value is too low. Let me give you a visual example of how you can double your PPC results without even touching any PPC campaigns. So here in the top line, we have a customer acquisition cost of $100. Simple as that. But you can see on the an example on the left, the customer lifetime value cost is, or customer lifetime value is $100. So your return on ad spend is 100%. Now, if you had the same store, but your customer lifetime value is $200, you're automatically doubling your return on ad spend with the same traffic and with the same metrics. So what does that mean? Focusing on customer lifetime value is very important, and I will define for those who don't know what it means. So essentially, customer lifetime value helps you to predict the profit over the course of the lifetime of the customer. Because a lot of businesses that I've noticed, they make a mistake on calculating the ROI on one purchase. But in reality, you have to look into the long term, that you can actually acquire a customer and then make as much money, make as much profit from them over the long run, over a year, 2 years, or longer. And the reason it's important is that in efficient industries, what I call efficient, meaning that you'll have the big players, we'll have some small players, you'll have some smart advertisers, you'll have some dumb advertisers. All of them together will likely inflate the cost of traffic. And you'll have to compete against those folks, no matter what. And in order to stay ahead of the game, you want to make sure that you start focusing on customer lifetime value, and then you can start improving your results on other aspects as well. But this is part of the bigger picture. So let me give you a big example. I did not know this factor, but it was fascinating. So to signify how significant customer lifetime value is, Starbucks generates over $14,000 from each customer over the lifetime. I was very surprised about that. I thought that maybe it could be, could be a couple $100 because they're still selling, $4 or $5 lattes. But then in reality, they make a lot more money from each customer. So the big benefit of that is that they can spend a ton of money on advertising to acquire new customers, because they know that over a certain period of time, they'll make way more back from their customers. So then they can outspend their competition and win in the marketplace. And here's a big thing, a big takeaway that you want to focus on. If you don't track your customer lifetime value, you're rarely focused on maximizing it. I think it's a very similar quote as using, what's not managed or what's not being measured is not getting managed. So very similar to CLV. Let's continue. So how do you calculate your customer lifetime value? So the formula has 4 components, and there are other formulas that are much more complex, but to give you a basic understanding, and the basic levers that you have to pay attention to are the average order value, then the average monthly transactions, then average customer lifespan, and like to measure that in months, and then the average gross margin to make sure that you take out the product cost. So what is your action item from the business side? So your goal is to increase the average order value, also increase average purchase frequency, and then average customer lifespan. You can increase them one by one, or you can increase all of them. This requires a lot of hard work, so you may not be able to do that all of them at the same time. But your goal is to up those factors that affect your customer lifetime value, because at the end, not only your pay-per-click campaigns will do better, but your overall website performance will increase. So I'll go over a couple of examples of how you could increase your customer lifetime value, and we'll use sushi making kits as an example. So here's an example. So there's a sushi chef making kit. So Amazon sells it, but here's what they're doing. They're upselling a product subscription. So here's what's interesting. You can buy the product by itself for $31. However, they're offering you a discount and pretty much a 4-month subscription, meaning that you can automatically repurchase that product every 4 months. So what does that do? So it incentivizes the buyers to purchase that and save 5%. Also, it increases the average order values and average customer lifetime value by about 186%, assuming that they stay on that subscription for about a year. That's a huge increase. Here's another one. You can do a product bundle. So as opposed to selling just that sushi making kit, you can upsell a knife and some seaweed, and boom, a 76% increase in the average order value. Here's another example. Let's say you're selling a sushi knife. You can sell the blade guard for that particular knife, and you're increasing the average order value by about 12%. So as you can see here, there are a lot of ideas that you can implement to increase your customer lifetime value. We cannot cover everything in this webinar, but this is something that you have to focus on and make sure that you work on a consistent basis so you can improve your customer lifetime value. So let's take our Sushi King example. So let's say we increase the average order value by 20%, increase the frequency from about one customer buying once a month to 20 customers buying more than once a month. And we also increase the lifespan from 30 days to 42 days, 20%. The effect is compounding, and our customer lifetime value goes up from $100 to $173. Now, let's take a look at the actual impact that we can notice in our increase in customer lifetime value. So all of the metrics are the same. The traffic is the same, the cost is the same, everything else stays the same. But with a higher customer lifetime value, as you can see, that's an item in blue, you're affecting your gross profit margin and return on ad spend significantly. And that can be a huge win. So let's get into this, the other part, which is analytics. And you may have a leaky sales funnel. So why do we care about the leaky sales funnel? No, it directly affects your conversion rate. And your conversion rate directly affects your PPC results. And that's the big takeaway. Your conversion rate will change, and if you can up your conversion rate significantly, you'll have much better overall pay-per-click results and overall website results. And looking into kind of like the benchmark metrics. So the average conversion rate for US online shoppers in the last quarter, in the last quarter of 2016, was about 3%. Of course, it varies by the industry. Some industries can have 5%. Some industries can have 2%. But if you're probably below 3%, maybe you should talk to Kurt and get his website rescue and improve that by a little bit. But let's break that down of what does that conversion rate really consist of. So let's kind of like look into the sales funnel with data. So you'll have to get certain visitors in order to convert a certain percentage. Then these visitors will probably look into the product, then they will add the item to the cart, go through multiple checkout steps, and then they will place an order. Okay, what's the problem with this? The problem is that you know your conversion rate. You kind of know the fact that, let's say in this particular situation for Sushi King example, the conversion rate is 5%. But the problem is you don't know what happened in the middle. You know that you had a certain number of visitors, and then you also had a certain number of transactions. Let's look into the sales funnel with complete data. Here the picture is much better, and you get insights into each step and into the progression of each step, and you can start taking some actions. You can perform an analysis of what's really happening. Why do, let's say, my visitors, or why do only 50% of my visitors add an item to the shopping cart? You can problem solve that by looking into your user experience and other factors. So as you can see here, knowing the full metrics is very important. And if you don't apply this, you're not able to improve your conversion rate, because you'll need to use a methodical approach on problem solving every step, because your conversion rate will be depending on user experience that you have out there. So let's go into a real example. This is one of our clients, and what we can notice here, this is actually the Google Analytics view, and here's what it looks like. So this is this view except with real data. And Google Analytics has a big picture report. It's called Shopping Behavior Report, which helps you to understand the progression from the visit all the way to the transaction. But they do give you the knowledge about the different steps that your users take. So you have your product views, you have your sessions that added to the cart, you have your checkout sessions, and then sections with transactions. What you'll also notice in Google Analytics is that they talk about, they give you the insight in drop-offs. So you know that a certain percentage of users dropped off from one step to another. That there was a different drop-off percentage in pretty much in another step, and so on. So as you're progressing, you're able to analyze this at a kind of bigger scale and start looking for solutions on how you can reduce those drop-offs and increase your overall conversion rate. Because as you can see here, you're going pretty much, you have a 1% conversion rate total. So you get a lot of traffic, but then, you know, if you just tweak each step and improve the conversion rate in every single step here, your conversion rate will go up and you'll make a lot more money. Now there's another report in Google Analytics where you can actually zoom in on the most important and the last steps, which is the checkout to transactions. And that report is called Checkout Behavior Report. So you can actually zoom in into the specific steps of your checkout. So let's say if you have defined your, let's say 3 steps in your checkout, you have, let's say you require people to fill in their contact information, then you go through the payment, then reviewing pretty much if everything that they have added to the checkout is correct. You know, they confirm their shipping information, and then boom, they had to submit the place an order button. So this will give you a better understanding into what's really happening in your checkout. So one way or another, you'll need to problem solve those areas. And there are many reasons why people drop off within those steps. I'll share a report from Baymart, and overall, since you're in e-commerce space, Baymart is a great resource for getting some really useful information, like specifically research on e-commerce. So this particular report talks about reasons for abandoning the checkout. And what you can notice there, out of about over 1,000 responses of US adults in 2016, extra costs were too high, meaning that either 61% of people who saw that maybe your shipping was too high, or maybe it was not free, maybe your taxes or your shipping and handling fees were too high, decided to abandon the checkout. The other one that I found interesting was when your checkout requires users to create an account. You may have noticed a lot of websites with guest checkout options today, and that's the reason. That's what they're trying to combat. Okay, then maybe the checkout process was too long. Actually, Shopify has a pretty good process. I think that you should be set on that. But if you're on another platform, you should be definitely aware of that. So as you can see here, there are a ton of reasons. How can you figure that out? So there's a way to integrate Shopify with enhanced e-commerce reports. So those reports that I showed you before, you can relatively easily integrate both your Shopify platform with your Google Analytics, and you can see a very similar view, and you can start problem solving. So there are two sides that you need to handle. So one is there's an option under Shopify side, and once you link your Google Analytics account to your Shopify store, there's also a checkbox which is called Use Enhanced E-commerce. And of course, within the Google Analytics side, you need to enable your e-commerce capabilities. And then once you enable that, you need to enable enhanced e-commerce settings and also define those funnel steps. Remember the steps that I showed you, which is, let's say, contact, payment, and whatever. You need to define them, and you will start having an insight in terms of what's happening with your checkout and within your shopping behavior. So how do you problem solve that? And how do you fix those leaks? So the first part of the solving the problem is you need to identify and fix those leaks. So first of all, look into the report, shopping behavior, checkout behavior, and then start looking for different drop-offs. A significant drop-off between different steps will give you a clue where you need to go deeper. And also, you can look into deeper dimensions. And I'll show you, as you can see here in this particular example, you can sort your checkout behavior, for example, into dimensions. So you can check out user types. So let's see how many users or what percentage of users, let's say, is it a new visitor or returning visitors, abandoned at different steps. You can also look into everything by keyword level. So you can identify which keyword had a higher drop-off rate. So that may mean that maybe your ad is promising too much and your website is not delivering what what you have specifically promised. You can also look into campaign level. So there are a lot of different ways to identify those issues. And then once you identify them, of course, start looking into user behavior. Let's see, maybe what sounds off. Maybe the design needs to be upgraded. Maybe you're looking for, or maybe your users are looking for, let's say, social proof or kind of trust signals in your site. That's why they're not ready to give up their credit card information. There are many reasons, but you need to problem solve them. And then once you problem solve them, of course, you need to fix them. And of course, you need to go back and start measuring the stats again. That's the only way to go around this. So let's assume that we tweaked, so we fixed some of those leaks in the sales funnel of Sushi King, and we improved the conversion rate by 1 percentage point. So we went from 5% to 6%. Let's take a look at the impact. So with the same traffic, we can get more customers. So we went from 50 to 60 customers now. And of course, it affects our gross profit margin. And of course, the ROI metrics, the return on ad spend goes up and customer acquisition cost goes down. Time for strategy. One of the big items that I've noticed about strategy and why marketers make mistakes with strategy is that your strategy may not be aligned with the buyer's journey and traffic channels. And strategy can be complex. And no matter how simple or complex your strategy is, I like to simplify it and make sure that you can clearly answer 4 questions about your strategy. So 1, who are you trying to reach? And I know that a lot of marketers or store owners like to say, well, I'm trying to reach everyone. Well, I think it's not a good answer. You need to zoom in and figure out who you're trying to reach out to exactly. So who are your customer groups? So in this particular case, if we're talking about Sushi King example, are you trying to sell to restaurants or are you trying to sell to sushi making enthusiasts? 2 different audiences, 2 different ways of reaching those people, and you'll be using different channels to reach those people. Also, where are you going to reach them? So this is a conversation about different types of traffic channels, okay? So are you talking about display, you're talking about paid social or paid search? And also within those areas, where specifically are you trying to reach them? Are you talking about Google AdWords, under paid search, or is it, are you going to with Facebook ads under paid social? You need to answer that. And then the third question is, how are you going to reach them? So that's an important question is, what is your strategy behind that? Which is, what types of keywords are you using, or what types of audiences are you using to target them? And then finally, what are you going to offer them? And you need to easily and clearly articulate that. It's not just, I'm trying to sell this product, but can you articulate the offer and come up with an offer based on the intent of that audience? So this leads me to the second point, which is PPC traffic is two-dimensional. And what I've created here is a concept called a paid media cube. And let me explain how it works. So you'll have two different dimensions. So one dimension is the traffic channel. And I talked about it, it's display, paid social, and paid search. And you'll see different colors, okay? So this is the traffic temperature. So meaning that so the brighter color will have a higher intent to purchase. Because if you're talking about display, so you'll likely run a lot of awareness campaigns. Paid social is slightly better in terms of targeting. You can figure out a lot of interesting user behaviors. And then paid search, this is essentially where you're harvesting market demand. People are actively searching for answers, and this type of traffic has a higher chance of converting. And then the same thing on another another axis, you have buyer's journey stages. So each traffic source has users in different stages. So you have people who are in the decision stage, so they're searching for, or it may be a retargeting audience that already knows who you are and they're ready to make a decision. You may have audiences who are in the consideration or awareness stages. So you need to be aware of both audiences, and then the intersection between both dimensions is important, because you'll need to develop a separate strategy for each. And once you develop the separate strategy for each, your results will improve, because you are aligning to what the users are thinking, what their intent is, and your offer will be better aligned to what they were looking for. So you'll have to be able to answer those 4 questions from the beginning. Who you're trying to reach, where you're going to reach them, how are you going to reach them, and then what are you going to offer them. So let's continue. So the action item for you is to take all of the traffic that you have for your store and map everything to the paid media cube. And your view may look like this, because you may not be aware of all different types of stages or different channels that you are aware of. And this will help you to identify the gaps. So those great areas are the gaps that you can actually explore. So you may be focusing only on the decision stage for paid search. Well, guess what? You may find some keywords that are in the consideration and awareness stages, and that will help you to increase your traffic. Same thing with paid social. Maybe you're not using certain retargeting audiences that you could venture out to. That may be another gap. But overall, knowing and understanding on what types of traffic you have will help you to better understand what the strategy should be for each cube within that. So let's get to sushi can example. So since I mentioned that we're focusing on paid search for this example, we mapped everything out, and what we have noticed is that the performance is very different in each stage, and have color-coded everything into different colors. So you have you have your metrics for the awareness stage, you have your metrics for the consideration stage, and then finally the decision stage. And what you'll notice is that the conversion rate will be different, and of course that's natural, because people here have a very low intent. Here in the decision stage, they have a higher intent, but of course everything based on the weighted averages, everything still averages out to 6% that we have discussed before. Same thing with cost per click. There's less competition in the awareness stage, and there's a lot more competition in the decision stage, because that's where a lot of people like to focus on. Let me just focus on the keywords. The problem is that the keywords are expensive. Everybody wants to focus on that, and no matter what platform you're at, a lot of marketers like to focus on what works. So when everybody focuses on what works, it doesn't work anymore, or it becomes very expensive. So it automatically affects your customer acquisition costs, okay? Because when you look into the conversion rate and of course your cost per conversion or cost per click, your return on ad spend will be different. So let's continue with our example. So let's say we mapped everything out, and we want to look into different stages. So as opposed to selling or having a sales message on all of the stages, we recognize the intent of different stages. So within the awareness stage, we know that the intent is very low. We're targeting folks who are not ready to buy anything. So we need to change our objective to lead generation, so we can actually get their information and then nurture them until they are ready to move to the next stage, which is either consideration or decision. So as opposed to giving them or trying to sell them a product that they're not ready to buy yet, we can offer them a sushi maker's guide, for example. It could be a PDF, and then you get their email address. You add them to your sequence. Then in the consideration stage with the medium intent, you can still do lead generation or maybe a low risk offer. Or you can do a coupon in exchange of their email address. And you can have, let's say, a 20% or 10% coupon for the first time customers. And finally, you can keep the offer that you have in the decision stage, because you know that the intent is much higher there. So let's go over some more examples of what types of offers you can suggest for different stages. So this is a graphic from a company called Client Boost, and they have nicely depicted different examples, different ideas for using different offers or offer types for different levels of traffic. So with cold traffic, where the intent is low, you can offer coupon, checklist, cheat sheet. You can do a podcast. It really depends on the industry that you're focusing on. So it may not apply it may not apply 100% to e-commerce. Only some of them. Then you've got the medium intent, and of course you've got the high intent. So what you can see here is that there's awareness, and you need to have that awareness of different intents and then align your offer to the right intent. So let's assume that we align our intent, align our offers for Sushi King. So we improved our conversion rate for awareness and consideration stages by 1% each. So we went from 3.6 to 4.6, and then we went from 6% to 7% conversion rate by improving our offers. Not a huge win, but it's an incremental win. So what this automatically gives us is that with a slightly higher conversion rate and the same traffic, we were able to get more customers, okay? And of course, that translates back into the gross profit and our return on investment metrics. Let's get into the execution, how you execute your strategy. So you may have a great strategy on paper, okay? You mapped everything out. Let's say you have everything on your paid media cube. You know exactly who to target. Everything looks perfect. But the problem is that the major ad platforms are pretty complex. There are a lot of knobs. There are a lot of options out there, a lot of settings. And if you're not doing this full time, or at least if you're not spending enough time on those platforms, you can make a lot of mistakes. So your intended traffic can be completely different from the real traffic that you're getting. Okay? So let's start with the first mistake. And this is kind of my pet peeve. And a lot of marketers say that keywords are used interchangeably with search term. In reality, it's not true. So keywords don't equal search terms. So search terms are what people actually type into the search engines when they're looking for answers. So this is the real market stuff. You have your audience typing in different words into the search terms, and boom. Keywords are for marketers to trigger those search terms in your ads. So you have to think about keywords and match types on how you target the search terms. So you need to shift your mindset from using or from even thinking at the keyword level to thinking at the search term level. And this will save you a lot of money, because this is where a lot of marketers fail, and this is where they lose a lot of money. So I will give you an example of one client campaign. This is a search term report for one of the clients. They sell kitchen cabinets. So in this particular example, that you can see that there's a good match between the keywords that you can see here, kind of like in the middle column, and the search terms. So there's a close match. We're targeting exactly what we want to target, and then we can measure the performance based on that. Then if there's a problem, the problem becomes with the actual search term because market does not care about that search term. There's not enough of intent. Now let's take a look at the bad match. This is a bad example. Let's take a look at the keyword. So this is an industrial client, and they sell big equipment, very expensive equipment. So here's the keyword, metal crusher. Now, this keyword triggers aluminum can crusher. Two different products. This is kind of like more a consumer type of product. This is the industrial product. So they've spent close to $300, but then when you look into that, poor match. And if you're looking into the keyword level, you're thinking, well, this keyword is not working, right? But in reality, it's triggering the wrong search term. And that's why your keyword is not working. I will give you another example. If we're talking about industrial screw conveyor, there's another example. So it's triggering screw conveyor, which may be very different from the industrial one. Let me give you another example. Let's say, okay, so here we go. Helix screw conveyor. Let's see if they're selling a product. Their search term is triggering the parts. So you may not care about that. So you want a closer match between your keywords and search terms, and that has to do with your keyword strategy and using different match types, okay? What type of match type you're using to trigger the right keyword. But that's why I consider very important to be looking into the search terms first and then see if your keywords are triggering the search term that you want to trigger. So how do you find the search terms? It can be done relatively easily. So let me show you. You can go under your keywords tab in AdWords, and there's a search terms button here. So it will open up a report with all of the search terms, and you'll see a very similar view. So once you get into that view, your action item is to analyze them and take an appropriate action. And I like to bucket them into different categories, okay? So you can have relevant search terms with good KPIs. So this is an opportunity to expand. You can add them as an exact match keywords, and you can modify bids for them. You can get more traffic from those particular areas because you know that there are good keywords and good search terms that you want to focus on. Now, I would like to flip everything to the opposite side because you'll also have irrelevant search terms that you don't want to target. So let's say you're targeting something completely different because maybe you're using a broad match keyword. You want to exclude those search terms entirely from your account because you want nothing to do with them. So you'll have to add them as negative keywords. And of course, you'll find some terms that are in the middle. So you'll have relevant search terms, but they have poor KPIs. And of course, those need a bit more time, okay? So you need to analyze them. You need to add them to your account, make sure that maybe you have them as keywords, and then you monitor them until you get enough of statistically significant data. So you can then decide what to do next. You can change bids. You can maybe even create different ad groups for them with specific ads, meaning that you change your strategy a bit. You have a different offer for those keywords until you make them work, or you exclude them if you don't see that they would work. So that's how you handle them. Now, here's another one, very similar. You may be intending to target a certain location, but the problem is that locations are not the same as user locations. So in AdWords and many other areas, same thing even with Facebook or even Bing ads, you have different settings for different locations. So AdWords settings have 3 different options for targeting locations. You have your physical location, which we would probably expect, which is based on users' IP address, GPS signals, and many other factors, which pretty much pinpoint where physically you're located. And then you would be serving ads to those particular people within that defined location. There's also location of interest. So here's what it means. So you can have a person out of the country searching for a keyword within the country or within a specific location. So for example, you can have a person in India, for example, searching for sushi supplies in Chicago. And if you have this option enabled, you're going to trigger an ad to that particular person. So if you don't sell internationally, this person may be irrelevant. And of course, it really depends on your business. You will need to let the numbers speak to your results, but make sure that you analyze that and you understand the difference. And of course, there's a third option. So in this particular example, this account had both. So it had physical location and it also had location of interest. So the first step to fixing a potential problem in intended versus real traffic is awareness. So you need to run a report. It's called a geographic report, which would tell you what location types you are triggering. So this will help you to understand and kind of run the numbers and see if the traffic that you're getting and the locations that you're getting traffic from are relevant and if they are producing results. As you can see here in this particular example, well, actually, location of interest is doing pretty well. Actually, maybe even better than, well, actually not maybe, but even a lot better than physical location. So you would need to investigate that, and maybe you can even scale that. Maybe you can add that location of interest to your targeting so you can actually get more of that traffic. Now, here's how to identify, or here's the traffic that could be triggered from location of interest, but it may not be relevant. So let's say you run a user locations report and you identify that you're having some traffic that you don't care about. So in this particular case, we ran a report. This company is targeting United States and Canada, but let's take a look. User locations report tells us that we're getting traffic from India. We're getting traffic from UK, Mexico, Brazil. There's no cost in here, but it's maybe too small. And then Philippines. If you don't deal with these countries, if you don't ship to those countries, well, you know what? It's time to exclude them and it's time to save some money on your ad spend. And then you can reinvest more into the locations that you want to target. How do you find user locations report? You need to go into dimensions, and then there's user locations report, and boom, you click that. So once you're in your campaign or multiple campaigns, you can zoom in, and there's also a way to add more columns right here. So you can actually get a more specific country. So you can actually zoom in and you can say, all right, well, let me target states within the United States, or let me target some specific cities within the United States. And then based on that, you can identify if numbers make sense for you, if those locations are actually producing results for your Shopify store. Once you identify the problem, time to analyze those locations. So we'll use a very similar approach as we did with the search term report. So we'll focus on relevant locations with good KPIs, okay? So I like to use primary and secondary locations. So kind of like primary, they're kind of like more money metrics, which is, you know, conversions, cost per conversion, and the secondary, which is clicks and click-through rate. So once you see the good metrics, it's time to expand. You're getting good traffic, you can actually expand and you can get more of it. Now, if we flip everything again, you'll have some irrelevant locations that I briefly explained before that you don't want to target at all. So you can exclude them entirely from your campaigns. And of course, you'll find some locations that are relevant, but they have poor or kind of like average KPIs. So similar as we did with search term report, you will add them and you'll manage them separately. So you get more data and then you'll make a decision once you get enough data. But you'll at least have relevance and you'll have awareness on what you want to do with those particular locations. So after you've analyzed everything, and let's say, you know, we'll use our Sushi King example. So we did clean up some traffic. So we got rid of some traffic that was not relevant. So we got rid of irrelevant traffic from all of the stages. And we were also able to find out that some keywords were not doing well. So we reduced the cost per click in all areas. So overall, we reduced our cost per click by about 20% overall. We were able to reinvest the traffic and get more traffic within each stage from the same budget. We have, as you can see here, the budget is the same, but the budget has shifted between different stages, okay? So based on that budget, given that there's an opportunity, we get more traffic, okay? How did that impact us? Of course, more traffic with conversion, our new conversion rate got us more customers, okay? So more customers resulted in more profit, and of course, our return on ad spend has increased significantly, okay? Let's look into the results for Sushi King. We increased our traffic by 250 clicks average on a month. Our conversion rate went up. So that gave us 33 more customers. Since our customer lifetime value has gone up, we're able to increase the profit margin significantly from 5 to close to actually over 14,000. Okay, and then our return on ad spend went up from 100% to close to 300%. So that's 3x. And as you can see here, the cost, customer acquisition cost, has gone down by about $40. So that's the approach. And of course, there are many mistakes in each area, but hopefully this presentation helped you to understand that there are 4 components that you need to constantly work on in order to improve your PPC campaigns. And all of those components put together will improve your results significantly. And I'll repeat that. So you have the business side, analytics, your PPC strategy, and your PPC execution. So if we have time, let's go through questions. And also, if we have more time, I have a bonus area for the execution, where I talk about traffic, actually where I talk about budget management. But let's start with questions and see if we have time for the bonus section.
All right, let's see. So in the chat, I don't see any questions, and under the post a question thing, no one has asked any questions. So it seems that you explained yourself very well. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Yeah, no questions. So, I see one popped up. Okay. All right. This is a good question. I like this. Michael's asking, is this really possible to do in-house, or should we plan to hire someone? I'll give my answer, and then Tom, should you have your own answer?
Okay.
So my feeling is, I like when clients who hire me have tried it themselves first, because then we're much better able to have a conversation around it, because you just have even if you tried it, spent $100 just playing with it, that gives you a much better understanding of what's going on with AdWords, and it'll make you as the client more comfortable having a conversation with whatever professional you hire. That's my answer, is try it, plan to fail, give yourself permission to fail. Just give yourself a little bit of money, small budget to experiment with, just to kind of play with it and try it and understand it, and view that as just an investment in being able to better communicate with your service professional. Tom?
Let's see, my opinion is very similar. I would say it really depends on the size of your company. Okay, so if you can have a dedicated resource who could spend enough time and who can actually handle these areas, then in-house may be an option. And I know that a lot of bigger companies, they have dedicated people who do their email marketing. They have dedicated people who do their conversion side. They have dedicated people who do their paid media side. So if you can afford a full-time person, because overall, once the person knows the business, then I think that it will be a lot more valuable, because they know the business, they can integrate in that, provided that they're good experts in their respective fields. Now, if you're not able to do that, I do agree with Kurt's suggestion, which is test it yourself, understand the process of how to handle certain items yourself, so you are a better educated buyer, so you can ask better questions to the service provider. For example, let's say a paid media agency, or let's say a web designer or kind of like conversion rate expert. So you can ask the right questions and you can help to kind of problem solve, or at least point them in the right direction, so you can work together on solving those particular areas. So it really depends on your situation and the size of the company that you are.
Okay. Another question from Sophie just popped up. Do you have any suggestion to target the millennium audience? And then she adds Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. As an example, Firefox, Drive, View on Yahoo search. Thank you in advance. Not sure what the second half of that question means.
Default search is Yahoo.
Oh, I'm told that Firefox's default search is Yahoo. I got you.
Oh, so
Tom, do you have any thoughts there?
For millennials, I would say that Google's capability of targeting demographics on keyword level still needs to improve. I think in some areas it still works well, but I would say if you are trying to target millennials, I would say Facebook would probably be one of the best areas to target, because when you think about like keywords on the paid search side, Facebook is really good. Like their main thing is demographics and user interests. So Facebook would be the route that I would go to target millennials.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, and within Facebook, that includes Instagram as a channel.
Yeah.
That's what I would look at. But ultimately, like I would try not to, well, you should absolutely create a buyer persona and figure out who the people are that are most likely to buy from you. Millennial is such a broad label. My 20-something sister-in-law is a millennial. I'm technically a millennial, and we're so wildly different, right?
I agree with you. Actually, we had a project. We're doing recruiting for higher education. So pretty much we're running Facebook ad campaigns for essentially, getting people to attend different, colleges. And we specifically targeted millennials. And Facebook was great, actually. But it took us a while to figure out, like, what are the levers within the targeting to figure out, like, how do we target them? But I definitely tried that. We tried that with multiple universities, with multiple programs, and it worked well. So Facebook, I would say, is the route to go. And yeah, I agree with you. Like, we all are millennial. I think if you're 35 or younger, you're a millennial.
Yeah, I'm 34, so I just barely made the cutoff.
Yes.
Anything else before we wrap it up? Tom, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I suggest everyone to try out eating a spoonful of wasabi. It's an enlightening experience. But other than that, I would say that you have to look into the broader picture of PPC. I think that the main message that I've noticed is that even like with some potential clients that let's say we have rejected, is that you have to, let's see, if you're owning an e-commerce store, you cannot look into PPC campaigns as silos. You have to look into the broader picture, because you want to make sure that you have a good product, your business side works well. So you can actually afford to go on PPC. Same thing with analytics. You understand your customers, you can actually improve those metrics. And then, of course, look into other areas, which is, your strategy, because you can have great execution, but with poor strategy, you won't get any results, or vice versa. You can have a great strategy on paper, but if you're, let's say, making mistakes like that, say on search terms or locations, and there are many other mistakes that that we can cover, not enough time to do that here, but no matter how good the strategy, if the execution is poor, you're going to be making mistakes and you're going to be losing money. So you have to look into the holistic view, and then, of course, zoom in each area and make sure that you have kind of like projects or initiatives within your company that help you to constantly improve those factors.
I'll ask a question. What do you think the single biggest mistake is that you see e-commerce stores making with PPC?
That's actually a good question. I could not pinpoint. So I would say my answer will be there are 4 mistakes. There are 4 areas. So I would say not looking into holistic view. So that's why we actually even came up with that base approach, which is like cover your base. Don't focus on the shining objects. Maybe that might be another one. Don't magic bullets on Facebook. Someone will tell you how to, quadruple your business in 3 days without any work. It's about execution. It's about doing the work. It's not about, sitting on beach and, drinking mojitos, and assuming that your e-commerce store will blow up without any work. I'd say that's my take. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I agree with it. I think ultimately everything with building a business is stacking the bricks, taking that iterative approach. You're never going to, unless you get really lucky and it's like win the lotto lottery, you're not going to see just hockey stick growth in your business. And even if you did, that would, then you'd be presented with a whole new series of challenges with fulfillment and customer service. So it's easy from the outside looking in to other businesses thinking like, oh, wow, I wish, their business exploded. They've got this overnight success. You're not seeing everything that led up to that.
Yes.
So, okay, great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Don't forget to join our Facebook group where if you have follow-up questions, you can ask there, and we'll be posting the YouTube recap of this. I'm going to, I will export all the registrants as an email for Tom and myself. And Tom, Michael asks, what's your contact information? Great question. Where could people go to learn more about you? Drop a link in the chat.
Okay, so I can give you my email. It's tom@scoobmarketing.com. You can also go on at scoobmarketing.com. Also, if I could, I would like to plug one thing. So, customer science. So we started a YouTube series called Customer Science. So it's about improving your e-commerce profits through scientific approach. We have 2 episodes already. You can just go on YouTube, maybe just find Scoob Marketing on YouTube, and you'll find 2 approaches. So we'll cover topics like this in about 3 to 5 minutes every month.
I love the idea. I do the weekly 5 to 10 minute series, and I like those just really quick, actionable bites. Let me post the link to that YouTube channel in the chat as well for folks. There it is. I just searched Scoob Marketing and I found it on YouTube, but there it is. Okay, great. If you guys for follow-up stuff, check out Tom's website, Scoob Marketing. My website's ethercycle.com, and go on Facebook, search for the unofficial Shopify Podcast Insiders, and you will find our Facebook group. We have 2,000 members. They're all Shopify store owners who are just looking to grow their store. How the heck do I scale this business? That's the question we're looking to answer in that group. So yeah, come hang out with us. And Tom, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Super valuable.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Pleasure.